You made an interesting comment this morning, your little book that you'd written, which was a collection of your articles over the past 10 years, and you mentioned one about Dead Man Walking,
Yes.
and then the recent version of that, it's not in the book, but I guess it's on your website, is Dead Governments Walking.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit
Sure.
about that?
Well, I wrote this article in '07 called Seriality Check Dead Men Walking, which said, where we predicted that the following companies would go broke: Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, GM, and Citigroup. And essentially they went broke. Some went into conservatorship, some were helped out by the government, but for all intents and purposes, they were broke at the time. And about 18 months ago, we wrote Seriality Check 2, Dead Governments Walking. And it essentially focused on the US government, and it focused on the known liabilities as reported by the Department of the Treasury using generally accepted accounting principles. Here's what our liabilities would be if we were accounting for the payments that we promised to make to our citizens. And you know, the number is something like 70, 80 trillion dollars. It changes all the time and goes up by 7 or 8 trillion a year, so I might be a couple of years out because I wrote that 2 years ago. But let's just use the number of 80 trillion. I mean, GDP is 15 trillion, and the government says he has obligations that they haven't recognized of $80 trillion. Well, how does, let's pretend it was a corporation with 15 trillion of revenue. How do you support 80 trillion of obligations? I mean, you're bankrupt. You have to break your promises. So, you know, are the Social Security payments going to be made? Are the Medicare and Medicaid payments going to be made? Are the government-sponsored pension funds going to be funded as promised? All these obligations where they promise to stand behind something, but on a mathematical and an accounting basis, there's no possible way that they can do it. So I call that dead governments walking. And I guess the classic example today is the Greece situation, who made even more gargantuan promises, only to find out that we can't do this. And next thing you know, no, you can't retire at 42, you got to work till this age, we can't pay you this, you know, everything changed overnight, almost overnight.
So a lot of promises are going to be broken by governments around the world?
Yeah, of course. A lot of promises can be broken by governments around the world. And of course, a lot of promises are going to be broken by pension plans around the world. You know, corporate pension plans where they can't get the return equal to what they assumed they were supposed to get. So whatever benefits they promise people, they're not going to generate the kind of return to pay those benefits.
Yeah. What's clear, you know, from this discussion and other discussions we had in your presentation this morning, you still expect that this financial bust has a way to go before we eventually cleanse the system and start with something new.
Well, it's funny when you said it has a way to go. I mean, cleansing. I mean, how long does cleansing take? I mean, that's going to be a long, long process. I don't even know when it finally goes broke, let alone cleanse it. I mean, the broke part, I mean, if we all realize that, you know, it's not going to make it, then to finally, you know, regain our footing and clean out that debt, I have no idea, James. I mean, you're more of a student of history than I am. I don't know how long that process takes. I'd hate to think how long it takes.
Yeah, it's impossible to predict. And the thing that I always find so scary is, you know, you can look at an individual country and see what happens when the currency collapses there. But when you're talking about the world's reserve currency, and in fact, basically all the currencies of the world now are backed by nothing except government promises. You know, how do you, recreate a system, you know, after everything collapses? And it's pretty scary.
It's a monumental chore to even think about it, and I don't know how that happens, and particularly when no one wants it to happen and no one wants to admit it should happen, and everyone goes every step of the way to try to prevent it from happening, which is really what's happening today.